Kia ora and welcome to CIO Leadership Live New Zealand. I'm your host, Kathy O'Sullivan, editor for CIO New Zealand. And my guest today is Mark Ledbetter, IT Director at House of Travel. Hello, Mark. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thanks, Kathy.
Yeah, busy times at travel picking up, no doubt.
Very busy, very busy. Busiest times in a couple of years anyway.
That's good, good to see people traveling again. So
That's great.
to kick things off, can you tell us a little bit more about your role and what your team at House of Travel looks after?
Sure. So I'm the IT director for the House of Travel Group. So the House of Travel Group is a group of companies, really. So we do corporate travel, we do leisure travel, we do online travel, we do travel brokers. We're most known for our retail stores, but we also have Orbit corporate travel as well, which is the biggest corporate in New Zealand. We have businesses in Australia as well. So my role and my team's role is to look after all of the IT systems within the group, and everything within travel is powered by IT. So we build online booking engines. So we have the largest online booking engine in the country, which is mixandmatch.co.nz. It's all built in-house. We build automation systems, financial systems, mid-office systems, everything in between. So quite a broad range. So we have a team of developers, we have application support, we have infrastructure people, we have IT security, we have project managers, and we have architects. So never a boring moment.
Yeah, quite a broad range of things you look after there, and not many people would know that your team actually builds things for clients as well, not just supports the business, but actually builds things, which is incredible.
Yes, yeah, and some of our software is actually sold through other travel agencies as well. So it's not just used by us, it can be used globally.
So in your role, transformation must come into what you do. And the word transformation is thrown around as a bit of a buzzword, we'll transform, it just happens. But, it's not an easy thing to do. So how has that approach taken shape in your own career?
It's not an easy process, and it's definitely something that you can't do single-handedly. I think a transformation is something that you do. You've got to have your team on board. You've got to have the organisation on board as well. And there's many different ways of transforming your business digitally. So I think for me, transformation can be as small as, hey, we're changing a small system, but can be as vast as actually we're changing the way that we're going to deliver IT within the organisation. I think the process for all transformation is the same. So you've got to have a vision of what you want to achieve. You've got to have the team on board behind you, and it's a team that's across the whole business. So you've got to go right from the exec level, right from the board level even, right down to the people at the coalface, because if they don't buy into that vision, it's hard to complete that transformation. And yeah, as I say, it's important to have that sort of buy-in across the business.
And is there ever a starting point to a transformation journey? What would prompt one? What would you advise CIOs to think about when they're starting out on a transformation journey?
Well, it's got to be that vision. So it's got to be, you've got to have a reason or a goal behind it. And I think it's really important to paint that picture of what you want that transformation to be within the business. And you've got to be able to articulate that to those different stakeholders. So as I said before, the most important thing for me is actually having the buy-in of that organisation. Where I see transformation going wrong is where you don't, where it's driven by one particular part of the business and not the business as a whole. You've got to have a strong team, as I say, to lead that transformation, and they've got to have goals along the way as well, so milestones that you want to achieve. You've got to have the buy-in and the support of the board and of your CEO. I think that's really critical, especially for major transformations. And you've got to make sure that you have those updates going through to the business as well. But the key thing is having those milestones, because I don't think in some transformation processes, so for instance, if you're moving to an agile delivery methodology, I don't know if you ever finish that transformation. I think it's an ongoing evolution, but you've got to have milestones, and you've got to be able to celebrate those as you're going along. So if you can establish those things at the start of a transformation project, I think that's really critical.
And what about challenges then? Are there ever any kind of roadblocks that come up in a transformation process that, you know, you think are kind of common and things that people need to be aware of?
Oh, absolutely. I think the most important thing is you can never over communicate. So just communicate at every step of the process. As I say, communicate to everyone within the business, and make sure it's an ongoing thing that you're focused on, so you don't ever forget about that. Don't forget about anyone in the organization as well. So change affects everyone, and you can spend a lot of time focusing on what you think are the key stakeholders within the business, but you're actually forgetting the people at the coalface and they're the ones that may be influenced the most. So you've really got to keep a focus with them, I believe. Always have a contingency budget. Things will always go wrong. Things will always happen. So you've got to have a contingency budget and a contingency plan. And once again, you can't do this alone. So it's so important to empower your team, and to bring that team with you on the journey, because it's not something you can do by yourself.
Great points there. I love that. Empowering the team and getting that buy-in. And as you say, communication is so important. And storytelling seems to be definitely a skill that more and more CIOs need these days. So when it comes to a transformation, Mark, and you touched on it briefly there, do you prefer to see transformation as, you know, a project with milestones and deliverables, or do you think that transformation now is just an ongoing development within an organization?
I think it depends on the type of transformation, but I think true transformation, when you're really trying to digitize a business, or you're trying to bring a major change in the business in terms of how even IT is working for the business, I think it's a constant evolution. I don't think that it ever ends. I think you're constantly looking at ways you can refine it. So for instance, if I talk about our agile journey, while we've moved along the way to being agile and we have agile teams in place and we work really closely with our stakeholders, we're constantly looking at new ways we can do things, or altering how our teams work or are structured. So I don't think that journey ever ends, but I do think it's really important, because of the nature of transformation, to make sure you do have milestones as part of that, because you've got to have something for your team to feel like they've achieved or they've reached a point. Otherwise, it can be that sort of endless, monotonous drag, which is not great for anyone. So yes, you've got to have those milestones, but I don't think it's a process that ever fully completes. And even when you're putting in systems, you're constantly refining those, or making them work better, or enhancing them.
And I guess celebrating those milestones is really important as well, right? To reflect on how far you have come.
Yeah, hugely. I think that's something we often forget when we're delivering projects, is we spend so much time delivering them. We don't spend enough time actually celebrating them and giving the team a chance to actually reflect on that and go, hey, these are the things that went well, or these are the things that didn't. And if you move on to the next thing quickly, that's how you burn people out, and it gives people a sense of achievement as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so many people are more conscious of burnout now with, you know, the pace of change that's been happening lately. So good that is on your radar as well. So as IT director, in what ways do you collaborate and influence House of Travel and its leadership team?
I think we're very lucky to have a close executive team. So we work really closely at the exec level, and we also work really closely with our board. We're lucky to have quite a dynamic board that brings along a lot of ideas as well. So I think that's really important. But communication is the key. So I think it's, IT is a component of every business and every part of the business. So I think you've got to make sure that you're communicating. So whether it's with the board or whether it's with our business, so we have a lot of key stakeholders in terms of our retail businesses. So making sure that we're giving them regular updates, and you're listening to them when they're telling you about their pain points, and you're showing them roadmaps of what you're doing for them, I think is really key as well. So obviously we do that through regular monthly meetings that we have with different stakeholders. We have weekly meetings across our management team, which I think is really important. And where I see areas of technology or innovations, I try and bring a cross section of the business into some of those sessions and see that technology. Because while I may think something's wonderful, it's those guys that are really going to be using it at the end of the day, and it's getting them to understand that, hey, there's these systems out there as well. So I guess in summary, it's just about being open, communicating. As I said earlier on, you can never over communicate, I think, and you touched on it as well, Kathy, about how we are storytellers, and we actually have to, that's a big part of our role now, is to communicate those ideas and bring people on that journey. So that's a big part of it.
And I love that approach of getting those end users into, to get their feedback, because as you say, often IT may be completely separate from the business, but actually it's such a huge enabler of your business and its success. So great that you are getting that feedback from them. It's so important. So when it comes to the role of a CIO or IT director or chief technology officer, it is an evolving role, and certainly is one that's become even more important in recent years. So what do you think are some of the key attributes of a successful modern day CIO when it comes to leadership?
Sure. I think you've got to understand the business. You've got to understand business in general. So we often come from these techie backgrounds, which is great. It's important. We've got to know the technology, but we also have to understand the bigger business now. So I guess historically, IT's kind of sat on its own and we've delivered what we wanted to the business. We can't do that anymore. IT is just has to be a part of the business, and IT has to work for the business. So in order to do that, you've got to understand every aspect of the business. So I try and spend a lot of time working within the business with different stakeholders and just understanding what people are doing. I think it's so important to empower your team and your people and trust them. I'm not a believer in micromanaging. I think you've got to, particularly in agile environments, you've got to let teams self-govern and lead themselves. And I think you've got to create a culture within those teams where you take away that fear of failure. It's inherent in a lot of us. We're always going, oh, what if we do something wrong? And I think people will make mistakes, but it's getting them to learn from those and getting them not to be afraid of that. So it's having that culture, I think, is really key. And that culture is so important within your team. So you want to have a culture where people are comfortable sharing ideas, they're open to saying, hey, if something's not working. So I think that's a really important key, is creating that culture and that structure within your business. I can't say this enough, but communication is just so critical. And I think, as I said before, we are storytellers as much as techies now. We've got to be able to share that vision with the business. We've got to be open to ideas and be prepared to change. We can't be set in our ways. If anything, the last 2 years have taught us that, and particularly in travel, we have to be so flexible and open to doing things differently. And you've got to have that drive to keep learning. So don't ever stop learning. I learn so much from my team, as well as all the people around me. I think that's really key. And most of all, I think, have fun. We work in an amazing industry where we get to play with technology. I guess that's why we all get into it. I'm lucky enough I get technology and travel, but I think that's the most important, is always have fun and enjoy it.
Some great points there, around empowering your team, not micromanaging them, and fun. It's often that missing factor, I think, then, and people do want to have fun, especially when there's such a war for talent at the moment. It's so important, isn't it?
It is. It's something that I mean, you can't, in some cases, you can't fight salary against salary. You've got to offer other things. You've got to offer that culture, and you've got to have. You want people to enjoy coming to work. I don't want people coming to work that are just on a monotonous drag. I want them to be excited about it, because it flows through everything that they do, and it makes it a fun place. We spend a lot of time at work, so it's got to be enjoyable.
Yeah, we do. We do. So when it comes to looking at your team, there's not enough diversity in IT roles generally. A lot of the people I speak to, especially in senior roles, are generally male and are generally white. What practical things do you think can be done, A, to encourage more people from diverse backgrounds into IT? And how do we not only get them into those roles, but grow them and get them to those senior positions as well?
I think, I mean, I'm lucky enough in my team, more than half of my team are women. Half my management team are women. It's a big part of obviously our travel organisation, and I think it's opening up the right courses and the right education to a lot of these everyone, I guess, that are coming through. Some of our best developers are not necessarily those that have been through university or even with formal qualifications. So they might have struggled in sort of traditional learning backgrounds. So I think we've got to have those opportunities for those people through school systems, through internships, to be able to bring them into the business. So we've done that in the past. We've brought people straight out of school that, hey, show an interest in technology or in programming, and how can we bring them along on the journey and develop them, because they're not comfortable in those sort of traditional learning spaces. I think there's a huge focus, and it's something I encourage particularly a lot of my team to do, sort of those women in leadership type roles. And there's some really good courses that are actually run within New Zealand around women in IT leadership roles, which I think is great. So I think that's really important. Yeah, and I think it's also important to recognise that we have a really multicultural team as well. So we do things like we have lunches once a month where everyone can bring along sort of something that is traditional to them. So we get biltong or curries or all sorts of stuff and everything in between, which is really great. And it's a nice way too for people to have a break away from work and doing something different. Yeah, so I think those sorts of things are really important, but really it is just not having those traditional barriers around, well, someone's had to have gone to university or have these various qualifications. I think we need to open different pathways for people to come through, because not everyone's going to have the same opportunities to go to university, but there's some incredibly bright people out there that can add a lot of value to your business.
So then, Mark, reflecting back on your own career, are there any kind of mistakes that you've made or things you've done along the way that have really shaped you as a leader now that you look back on them?
Definitely. And I think the first one is, and this is why I'm so passionate about it now, is trying to hold on to a lot of the stuff yourself and not trusting others. Our roles are too big and too diverse now not to be able to delegate or trust people. And I think if you trust people and you empower people and back them to make decisions and support them, I think you flourish. I mean, my biggest measure of success now is if I can actually create more CIOs in my team. I think that's a really important thing. I think also making sure you have a work-life balance. I think we're all very guilty, and particularly in IT, of working sort of all the hours at various ends of the day. But as you get older, I guess, you learn to have that balance. And I think now, especially through COVID times, and especially with everyone working remotely, that mental health is so important. So it's understanding our roles are stressful, and so having that balance is really important, and not being afraid to sort of articulate that with your teams as well, and making that really important, because your mental health is just as key as yours, and you lead by example. So if you're working long hours, they're seeing that, they almost think they are expected to do it, and that's not a healthy or sustainable culture. I think you've got to make sure you take time to plan and strategize. It's such an important role, but it can be lost a lot of the time. So we spend so much time doing or trying to be involved in things, we sort of forget that actually a big part of our role is to create strategy or look at new systems or create new opportunities for the business. So I try and block out time where I can actually do that strategy piece. And I think it's also really important to communicate and share your ideas. So make sure you seek feedback from every level of the business. And that's probably one of the key ones is never forget every person within your organization is affected by the change that you're putting in. So make sure you're working with them and you're understanding some of their concerns, because it's not just the CEO that's affected, it's the people right at the processing end that are as well.
What advice would you give to aspiring IT leaders? You know, people who want to become an IT director or a CIO or a CDO one day.
Well, it's a classic that I guess the All Blacks and major sports teams have followed for years, but that's culture eats strategy for breakfast. So it's something you hear a lot, but once you're in these organizations, it's so important to have a great IT leadership team around you, a great IT team around you, and create a culture that flourishes. So trust your people, empower your people. They are the ones that are going to drive the change within the business. And if you have a great, strong team around you, I think that's most important. And focus on growing those people as well. They're your biggest asset. And they're the ones that are going to make the difference. And we see it, especially these days, how hard it is to recruit talent. So if you've got great talented people, look after them, grow them, develop them, and make them successful as well. So yeah, that's a key for me. Always remember your culture is so important within a business and within your team.
Brilliant. I love that. And also to your point earlier about the job of a leader is to create more leaders. I really like that. So then finally, Mark, can you tell us what's important to you in the months ahead?
I guess for me, travel particularly has had a devastating last couple of years. We're one of the few lucky organizations that are still in business. So the focus for me is to really grow my team back again. So it's been a really tough couple of years for my team. We've delivered a lot of change over those 2 years. We've delivered a lot of new systems. So it's making sure that we're looking after those guys and we're now growing ourselves as well. So we're growing back into a position where we're dominating the travel industry, which is what we want to do. But we're also bringing in a lot of other tools. So as a business, it's going to be much harder for us to bring new people into the business. We've lost a lot of talented people, so we've got to bring in a lot of automation. We've got to remove all the touch points that we have and just allow our people at the coalface just to do what they're really good at doing, which is selling travel. And we sort of take care of the things behind the scenes. So that's the most critical thing for me, is just automation and growing our business back to where it was a couple of years ago, which we're well on the path to do.
Mark Ledbetter, IT Director at House of Travel, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Kathy.